What's going on YouTube? It's Teej, back again with another video, and today I am dishing out my 2024 NFL draft grades. Really excited to bring this video your way. We're focusing mostly on the top 100 picks. There will be a couple of day 3 picks that I'll shout out, but we're going to go team by team, and I'm going to be dishing out my NFL draft grades. I'm going to do my best to try to account for trade value, especially moves that's like, oh dude, they moved a ton of assets to be able to do this. But yeah, and then at the end of the video, if you're interested, I'm going to be talking about my upcoming content schedule, what I want it to be for the offseason, and basically what this channel is going to be, through the offseason leading up to the 2025 NFL draft. So if you're interested, be sure to stick around to the end of the video or jump to last 30 seconds to a minute of this video. But obviously, we do start with the Arizona Cardinals. Marvin Harrison Jr., slam dunk ad there. Obviously, not much to talk about. That's a huge W. Darius Robinson, I think that's a guy that can play every down. Probably on the edge, early downs, run stop, or run situations, and then third and longs, obvious passing spots. You're playing with a lead. You're probably rotating them inside. So that was actually a point where I had kind of stopped doing the live NFL draft shorts. Part of it's just the views weren't insane. I mean, they were good. Thank you everyone who watched that. I'm not complaining, but it just got to a point by the end of that first round. And plus there was the Xavier Worthy trade up, that's kind of a sexy move, quote unquote, but it was kind of a safe Packers pick, safe Bucks pick. This was a safe pick to me. That's part of the reason I was like, yeah, it's okay. It's a good place to stop. But yeah, 3 down flexibility, good against the run, the power he plays with, nice compliment to B.J. Ojulari. And again, you're going to get a ton of use out of him. Max Melton, and I kind of want to talk about him in combination with Elijah Jones. Love that 3rd round value. Man, it feels, I don't know who's going to be the inside out guy, Garrett Williams or Max Melton. I'm kind of pulling for it being Max Melton, but I love those two ads. I was a big Elijah Jones guy. I was a really big fan of Max Melton. I liked Garrett Williams a ton coming out of Syracuse last year. So I think in 2 off seasons, Monty Austin-Forth, Jonathan Gannon and company, they've turned around that cornerback situation into a room that I'm optimistic about long term versus 2 years ago. I was like, yeah, that unit needs to be overhauled. Trey Benson, I mocked Jalen Wright. Trey Benson, a ton of the Cardinals. I just love the idea of that explosive complement to James Conner alongside Kyler Murray. I think you could do a couple of questionable 3rd rounders. They really saved it there with Elijah Jones. But Isaiah Adams, did you have to take him there? You look at Tyler Davis going, the 6th round? I guess we'll find out once we get to the Rams. But, it's like, top of the 3rd, I don't know. Tip Ryman, I get what they're going for, but it's a number 2 tight end, a blocking type. Yeah, it's kind of what I'm assuming here, but it's okay. Look, I like the player, kind of an interesting build and great combine, but, did you have to do that there? But then they bounce back. Deidrean Taylor Demerson, I think a guy you could play all over the field. Maybe some Buda Baker insurance. Or you've just given Jonathan Gannon 2 of these guys that can move pretty much anywhere all over the field, and you're going to really keep offenses guessing. Xavier Thomas, love the the upside there. Freaky athlete. Him plus Ojulari, especially in those NASCAR packages, that could be an issue for offenses in and of itself. And then Christian Jones, the last pick I want to talk about here. I think that's your Jonah Williams replacement, honestly. He's got experience both at left and right tackle. I don't think Williams is anything special. So I could see Williams starting there for a year, and then maybe Christian Jones takes over by year 2. A lot of times you see tackles take that year 3 to sometimes even year 4 leap. So it might just be Jonah Williams, your right tackle, for 2 years. Christian Jones then steps in and becomes the starter thereafter. Man, part of this is kind of tough because there's so much volume here, and this is going back to my 20. I'd almost just. I think I gave the Cardinals an A last year because I was like, man, they just put themselves in a great position for the 2024 draft, and now they're kind of reaping the benefits of that. So I didn't love every single pick, but just the sheer volume and then the home run of Marvin Harrison Jr. Love the 2 corner picks. Darius Robinson gives you a ton of value, and then also Trey Benson. Yeah, I gotta give Arizona an A to start us off. All right, let's jump over to the Atlanta Falcons next. Michael Penix, obviously, that was a little bit of a head scratcher. I'm gonna try to keep things positive. I always will. And I'll be honest, if Kirk Cousins does his job, and if he is worth the money that the Falcons are paying him, what's the earliest Atlanta drafts the next 2 years, right? What's the earliest pick they have? 20, 21, 22, kind of the earliest end of that. So in a lot of ways, it's a good quarterback class, and what are we going to be picking the top 10 if we're paying Kirk Cousins all this money? I can understand from that standpoint. And this whole draft cycle, my real major frustration and kind of conflict within myself with this pick is this whole draft cycle. I'm like, dude, if you put Michael Penix in Los Angeles, in Minnesota, and just one of these McVay schemes, he is going to be a monster. I think he's the perfect trigger man, the perfect point and shoot guy for that system. And he found his way into one, So, I look at the Kirk Cousins contract, $100 million guaranteed. He's making $45 a pop. So, I think there's like a $12 million dead cap hit before you get to year 3. So I don't know if I'm trying to read this timeline too closely, but 2 years of Kirk, hand over to Michael Penix, see where it takes you the rest of the way. My only concern is like Raheem Morris is going to have to keep hiring off this McVay tree. Like if Kirk Cousins takes them to the NFC Championship one year, Zach Robinson's probably getting a head coaching job, if we're honest. So then, who's the OC after that? So you got a McVay guy in there right now. You're going to have to keep it that way if you do want to eventually turn it over to Michael Penix. In my opinion, Ruka, honestly, in a lot of ways, a little early, but then they kind of make up for that value. Like Braylon Trice, I think they got some good value there in the third. A guy that felt like he was falling. You just got to trust the tape with him. Like a lot of power, high motor. That's the type of dude you're getting. I think he's a better football player than probably an athletic tester. And then Brandon Dorless, a lot of flexibility there. So Dorless and Robo, it's like I think they got Dorless at a good value. Rook a little earlier than I would have taken it, but it almost kind of balances out there. But those 3 guys across the defensive line, for a team that we've been talking about, man, they need more pass rush. They need more, D-line talent. 2 flexible pieces and a row, Dorless, a high motor guy in Trice. I think we see immediate production for him. JD Bertrand, I think he had better like measurables and like the things you draft a linebacker for versus like Maris Leofau, but Leofau just comes with a little more pop and attitude. So like I could see a world where Leofau, why he went earlier than Bertrand, but Bertrand's kind of more that okay, he's got what I'm looking for in a linebacker. I can coach him the rest of the way. So going to be interested to track those 2 Notre Dame linebackers. Chase McClellan, I'm interested by any running back they add to that room, but Algier and Bijan feel like the guys leading the charge there. I like the defensive line adds. Row was probably a little early, especially considering they traded up for that. And then Penix. I could see a world where in 3 years where like the Falcons are geniuses, and kind of like Green Bay now, where it's like, hey, this Jordan Love thing ultimately worked out. But at the cost of what, right? Like the Packers didn't win a Super Bowl because maybe they didn't draft a receiver in the first round when they should have, And what are the Falcons losing here? Like you could have gotten Quinyon Mitchell here, and then plus these D-line, investments. I love this draft. I'm all about it. But instead, quarterback of the future when you just signed a guy to $100 million guaranteed. So I don't know, pretty conflicted. I think honestly the defensive line value that they ended up getting kind of boosts this grade. I don't have C pluses in here, but this probably would be C plus range. But if you think it's a D just because they wasted the most valuable pick at number 8 overall, I totally get that. But I'm going to give them a C because I think they overhauled that defensive line, and then maybe in 3 years we're talking about the Falcons' forward thinking and kind of the moving forward. Hey, it's a good quarterback class, take advantage of that. We'll find out with some time. Baltimore Ravens, I hate saying this as a Steelers fan, but their process is just so sound. Nate Wiggins falls in their lap. Love that. Roger Rosengarten, I had mocked that a ton in mock drafts, and I think that's their starting right tackle this year. Adisa Isaac, high upside, and at the worst, just going to be a guy that in 3rd and long passing situations can win in a variety of ways. So you're getting some at least high floor production there in the most important situations of the game when you're in pass protection or when you're rushing the passer. Tez Walker, like the outside, receiver. It feels like they always get kind of these, Rashad Bateman's more slightly built. Zay Flowers isn't the biggest guy. So now they got to do with legitimate size, can play on the outside, plus that long speed, and a team that teams are going to have to focus on stopping Lamar and Derrick Henry. So now you got that over-the-top threat that's going to keep safeties on it. So I love that ad. TJ Tampa, that plus Nate Wiggins, I'm like, all right, one of these 2 guys is going to work out. I was a big Rasheen Ali guy this whole draft cycle. He was in my top 10 running backs. I feel like if he doesn't get hurt day one of the Senior Bowl, we're talking about him a whole lot more during this process. Devin Leary, interesting backup quarterback option for the future. But I love Tampa and Wiggins. They're also 2 different corners, one with a little bit more mass. I think they both have good height, like Wiggins right around 6 foot, Tampa at 6'2", but there's a little bit more to Tampa in his body, and but obviously doesn't run in the 4.2s like Nate Wiggins. So I just feel like those 2, plus you draft a starter and Rosengarten, a specialist receiver, and Tez Walker, that really fits with what this offense was missing. And then Adisa Isaac, a high floor, going to be at least at the worst a productive DPR for this team. I look at those first 6 picks, I guess, on the screen right now, and I'm like, man, it's just. You got some comfort, you got some flexibility with those 2 corners. One of those 2 should become one of your starters, and kind of focusing on that. Marshall Lattimore, getting up there in age, but still in his 20s. Him, Brandon Stevens, and then these 2 guys. I feel pretty confident that there's 3 confident starters and a capable backup in that mix. And then you draft a starter in Rosengarten, specialist in Walker, productive DPR in Isaac. I mean, there's just so much return on this investment. Rasheen Ali is the 3rd back behind Mitchell and Henry too. I love that. So. It is with great remorse. I have to give the Baltimore Ravens an A. And none of these feel like reaches. You're like, Adisa Isaac at 93? Yeah. Tez in the 4th? Awesome. Tampa in the 5th? Yeah, or late 4th? We're jumping all over that. Wiggins at 30? You love that value. So just all good fits. with no reaches. Them and the Eagles. They do this every year. So insert the Jesse Pinkman. You can't keep getting away with this meme. Then we get to the Bills. So all in on Keon Coleman, which is interesting. But I did watch his first presser with the Bills, and I'm buying in there. Seems like a funny dude. Cole Bishop, I can see where that's like a nice long-term safety piece. Dwayne Carter's interesting. Pairing him up next to Ed Oliver. Third and long situations are going to be fun to see with those two guys on the field. Ray Davis just a rock-solid back. I think Cedric Van Pran is probably their starter week 1. Edifon Olafosio almost kind of feels like a nice like Tyrell Dodson replacement. Nice athlete. Olafosio is going to need some coaching, but in a zone-heavy defense, his athleticism, I think, plays at a pretty nice level. And Javon Solomon, this whole draft cycle, I've been saying this team cannot afford to have its pass rush subside. Solomon, with experience at linebacker and at edge, like, move him both from the inside and through the middle. Like, I feel like this is just like you're not playing him on early downs or anything like that, but when it comes to obvious passing situations, I keep rolling out that phrase, you're feeling pretty confident this guy's going to be a productive pass rusher, and you're going to probably see a whole lot of Javon Solomon on the field in those third and longs, in the fourth quarter when you're up by 2 touchdowns, things like that. So I really like the value of Javon Solomon. This draft's going to be defined by Keon Coleman long term. Like, in an offseason where you move on from Diggs and Davis, what does Coleman bring you in return? So that's going to be the biggest thing. Like Bishop, like the value for Davis. I was a big Ray Davis guy. Glad to see he went relatively early in the running backs thing, grand scheme of it. Love the Van Pran, Olafosio. I mean, this is a strong B, but ultimately your biggest position I need, and as good a receiver class we've ever seen, or at least in recent memory that we've seen, you only get one of those guys. That's a little interesting. And also, like, I like Keon Coleman, but I'd have gone A.D. Mitchell in that spot. But, you know, the NFL seems to be a little bit lower on him. Then we get to the Cardinals, the Panthers. They start with Leggett and Brooks, a couple of nice offensive weapons. Moving up for Brooks, I don't necessarily love. You know, this was a running back class that was more good than great. Because of that, like, I'm like, yeah, just wait till they get to me. You know, I think there's a lot of good to pick from. I don't think I need to move up for the guy who's slightly more good than others. Leggett, though, I'm really interested by that fit, and hear Dave Canales talk about him, kind of selling me on a little bit of his fit in that offense. Yes, that's coach speak that's kind of luring me in that direction, but I don't know. Canales feels like he's got a good plan in place, and I'm intrigued to see it. Trevin Wallace, multiple ball of clay. I'm interested to see what he looks like. It's probably going to take 2 years, but high-end athlete, and it's almost like if Jamin Davis didn't go in the first round, didn't have those expectations, what could he have been? That's almost what we get here with Trevin Wallace. JT Sanders, I mean, he's a much better receiver than Tommy Tremble, so it feels like you got your nice blocking tight end, nice receiving type. Charles Smith-Wade, love the idea of playing him in the nickel, and then that's pretty much all I want to talk about here. Michael Barrett's kind of an interesting draft and stash. Feels like one of those two linebackers. Barrett's very different than Wallace. You know, it almost feels like you took from both ends of potential linebacker prospects, and you were like, one of these two will be okay, right? So, yeah, I don't love moving up for Brooks, but Brooks is going to be their best running back. I drafted Chuba Hubbard in almost, I think, legitimately every fantasy league, all but one, I think. All my fantasy leagues but one, because I'm not a big Miles Sanders guy. So I do think Brooks has become the most talented back that they lean on pretty heavily in that backfield. So some offensive reinforcements, a couple of interesting defensive pieces. JT Sanders, I can get behind it. I'm gonna give the Panthers a B. All in all, I think this is a solid draft, and you'll see this throughout this video. I think the NFL is getting better drafting. I really do. This is a quick one. The Chicago Bears, man, you got 5 draft picks, and I love 4 of them. Let's start with Torrey Taylor. Like, that's the one where it's like, dude, we're using a 4th round pick on a punter. That being said, he was an awesome punter, and he punted in that, punted the Big Ten, played through weather. Like, field position is going to be huge, and especially with the defensive-minded head coach. I could see where, like, Matt Eberflus is like, dude, may only be a difference of 5 to 10 yards on each drive, but trust me, that makes a world of difference, right? Like, I could see where he's, kind of pounding the table, trying to put his defense in better spots. But Caleb Williams, Roma Dunze, you're already kind of starting at A+ tier. Kieran Abagaji's really fascinating. All the, the tools, the athleticism, the arm, like everything you want in a starting tackle. He just, dominates at the Ivy League. So how much is that going to translate to the next level? But Braxton Jones potentially put on watch here. Like, Braxton Jones, the whole thing's been like he's a solid player for a 5th rounder. But can you do better for solid for a 5th rounder? Can you just find solid? Can you just find good where you're not even mentioning the round the dude was drafted in? I think Amagaji's got some upside to be a better player than Braxton Jones. Really interesting to see that they made this pick in the 3rd. And then Austin Booker in the 5th, man. Like, he doesn't have the weight that, especially a lot of Bears fans were telling me. I totally get it. Like, Eberflus, traditional kind of a 4-3. He wants a defensive end that's, 260 plus, somewhere in that range. Booker's not that. Especially when you see him at the combine at 245, and the testing's not great. Probably means he was playing closer to 238, 240 at Kansas. So not your prototypical Matt Eberflus defensive end, but nevertheless the value in the 5th round, I'm going to see what that's all about. He is 6'6". He does have really freaky arm length and wingspan, so there is something there with Austin Booker. I think A+ on the first 2 picks. That's the most important part of this. I like Amagachi. I think they got him at a good value. Same thing with Booker. It's going to be interesting to see his development. And then Torrey Taylor, I can actually sell myself on that. And special teams, it's kind of hard to sell yourself on like drafting a kicker, drafting a punter. But I will say when they are kind of a special, like Torrey Taylor is kind of one of the better punters I think I've watched in college football. Not that I'm really keeping up with all that. I'm not keeping a deep data database and back catalog of that, but he broke a lot of NCAA records, played in that kind of weather. I can sell myself on it. Let's go to the chase here. Chicago Bears, it's an A. You nailed it with those first 2 picks. Ultimately, that's going to be what people remember this draft for. All right, next up, the Cincinnati Bengals. Amarius Mims, I think that's a great fit. Chris Jenkins, one that we mocked a ton here on the channel. I think that's a great DJ Reader, at least run-stopping replacement. We'll see what happens with the pass rush side of it. Jermaine Burton, if not for the off-the-field stuff, he goes a lot higher than this. Kind of an outside receiver. Maybe he's a T. Higgins replacement long-term. I really want to know, depending on how they feel about Burton, is there a world where they just play Jamar Chase in the slot? I say that as someone who, I think that, the offensive, the 1% you can steal in offense is by putting your best receiver in the slot. I'm a firm believer in that. And I think because of that, slot corners become such a valuable position in the NFL. So I think a little differently than most there. But is there a world where you just let Chase eat from the slot? Doesn't mean he still can't stretch the field from there. Ask Malik Neighbors at LSU. You could still stretch the field from there. But then have Burton and Higgins on the outside. That's a lot of fun to think about. Also, you could use Andre Yoshivas as an outside guy. You could use him as a big slot. Charlie Jones, maybe the Tyler Boyd replacement. So I'm just interested to see where Burton fits into this. Is he just a designated deep threat? Is he going to see the field a whole lot his rookie year? In general, what's the character like? So a lot of question marks there, but I think there's a lot of potential payout with that pick. McKinley Jackson, I'm fascinated by that. Like the run-stopping upside there. So him and Jenkins feels like, one of those two should work out. Also, Jenkins might be like your Reader replacement. Jackson might replace P.J. Hill next year, so I like that. Eric All, my tight end 3, big Eric All guy. Mocked this, fit to the Bengals. Did a lot in the 3rd round, but they get him in the 4th. Love the upside of what could potentially be there if he stays healthy. Josh Newton, I think a solid football player, kind of lost a lot of steam throughout this draft process, but I think just, hashtag a good football player. It could potentially become a solid rotational corner for the Bengals. Tanner McLaughlin, kind of the same thing I've talked about. I love when teams double up in position because it feels like him or Eric All, one of those two should work long-term. Receiver background for McLaughlin. Learning from Mike Gesicki, that's kind of a fun idea. Cedric Johnson. And then, Matt Lee, actually, don't be surprised. Ted Karras, Alex Kappa, I think they're both in the last year of their contract. Matt Lee starting for the Bengals in another year's time would not shock me whatsoever. Yeah, I think this is a solid draft here for the Cincinnati Bengals. I think the AFC North just put together a lot of good drafts. I don't want to hand out a ton of A's, but honestly, I think the Bengals, I think they did a great job addressing positions of need, future-proofing the roster, and they're kind of getting into this Ravens mindset where they're not reaching to address positions of need because they patch it up in free agency, and more often than not, they're drafting a year ahead. So that way, when they get to the next draft, when we get to 2025, we're not saying, holy shit, they need a right tackle. No, they already drafted one. Kind of like Myles Murphy last year, where it's if he takes a step forward this year, you're not looking at edge as a massive need in 2025 or even in this class. So all the process there from the Bengals, they get an A. To the Cleveland Browns, Michael Hall Jr., love that. And they got a couple of nice run stoppers, but Michael Hall Jr. in obvious passing situations, think he's going to feast. Zach Zinter, great fit. You dropped to Ohio State and then Michigan with the first 2 picks. That's kind of funny. But Zinter, that's a future starter, especially as they get a little older on the interior. Love that. Jamari Thrash is a really interesting guy. Can't believe he fell to the 5th round. Was a big Thrash guy. Long speed, deep route running. Also a nice yards after the catch threat. So they got some extra receiver depth, this year versus what we were talking about, last offseason. But I think Thrash finds a way onto the field pretty soon. Miles Hardy could be an interesting kind of nickel corner option for this team. So all in all, especially given the capital they have, no 1st, no 4th, I think the Browns did a pretty solid job for themselves. They don't have a 1st, so I am, because obviously you're moving those picks and you're doing something with them. So I like the players they selected each spot. This would be a B+ if I had a plus, but yeah, B+. I can't hand out too many A's, but if they had more draft capital, this easily could have been a draft that was in the A range. To the Dallas Cowboys, Tyler Guyton, I preferred Kingsley Suamase as my upside tackle, but that being said, Guyton to the Cowboys was one we mocked a ton. I think it makes a lot of sense. Plus, they trade back and make this pick, so I can look at it more favorably there. Sticking on the O-line, we'll come back to Nealon. Cooper Beebe, I had never mocked this, but makes all the sense in the world. I think enough movement skills to fit the blocking scheme, but also just a rock-solid pass protector there at left guard. makes shifting Tyler Smith that much easier over at left tackle. Now the defensive side, I like these next 3 picks. Marshawn Kneeland, I mean, he's a very different edge rusher than, a Micah Parsons or even a Sam Williams and stuff like that they've drafted recently, but I think Kneeland could develop into a Tank Lawrence replacement, definitely. So it's going to be interesting to see where he is in a couple years' time and what they want to do with Tank Lawrence. Maris Leafau kind of feels like a Mike Zimmer linebacker. Love the thump and kind of tone-setting energy he plays with. Kalen Carson, and we'll see what happens if they want to keep running zone or man, but I like him, especially in the 5th round, and I wonder if that could enable Deron Bland moving inside. Maybe they do that with Carson, but I think Carson's an outside guy. Bland, a lot of experience in the slot, and he's a playmaker. Again, I value slot more than most, I get it, but that type of playmaker, closer to the center of your defense, I like the idea of that. Ryan Flournoy, I don't know exactly how to say his last name, but got a ton of hype. Freaky athlete. Wasn't a guy I could get a whole lot of tape of. Southeast Missouri State, kind of a harder one to get your hands on there. But heard a lot of love for him. So as a 6th round kind of draft and stash development guy, I don't hate it whatsoever. Honestly, Cooper Beebe might be my favorite pick here out of the Dallas Cowboys draft, but I think rock solid. Like the investment for the offensive line. Nice defensive value sprinkled throughout, and I'm really excited to see what Mike Zimmer does with those guys next year. All right, to the Denver Broncos, Bo Nix. He's QB6 off the board. He was my QB6. Nevertheless, I think he makes a lot of sense with Sean Payton. That was one that we did nail in our predicted mock. I felt like that and Caleb Williams 1-1. Everyone pretty much got that one, and Bo Nix at 12, right? Jonah Ellis, they need some more pass rush. I think they're going to get a highly productive DPR type. We'll see if he can add some more mass play on early downs. Troy Franklin, he was my receiver 16, I think, but pairing him up with Bo Nix, very interesting. If they can play him off the line of scrimmage, avoid press coverage, where I think that 173-pound frame could get into trouble, and maybe he is a little bit better as a deep route runner, avoids some contact down the field. Again, I think that frame could be an issue. 9-inch hands, too. There's a lot of things I don't like about Troy Franklin, but pairing up with Bo Nix, getting him with Sean Payton offense, I could see a world where this works. Chris Abrams-Strain for a team that needs a number 2 corner. I think they got it here at Chris Abrams-Strain. He played outside a ton at Missouri, so yeah, he's a little small, but I think he's just got great feel for the position and just kind of overcomes a lot of, lack of a better phrase, shortcomings, right? He's not the world's best athlete. He's not the world's biggest guy, but he just knows how to play the position. He's technically sound. He overcomes a lot of that stuff. You could play him on the inside, but I think Jaquan McMillan's locked up that slot role. And then Audric Estime. That one was a little interesting to me. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but Javonte Williams was drafted the year before Peyton got there. Could he be someone who's potential on the move this offseason? I don't know. I think that'd be a bad decision because Javonte Williams, when he's healthy, is a stud. But maybe he's not a Sean Payton type. And, you got Chase McLaughlin there. Now you got Audric Estime. It feels like that room's getting more and more crowded. Samaje Perine. It's just it feels like we're kind of running out of space for where Javonte Williams is leading the charge here. So do they eventually move on from that? Am I overthinking this Audric Estime 5th round pick? I don't know. But I'm going to be really interested to see what Denver does. Still feels like there might be a couple picks that are on the move there. Not my favorite class. Really like the value for Chris Abrams-Strain, though. That definitely boosted up. I'm going to give the Broncos a C. I mean, Ellis is going to be a productive player, but in a specialized role. Abrams-Strain, I think, is a good value. I'm not a big Franklin guy. Nix is QB6. He's fine. He's a good scheme fit. And I'm interested to see what Audric Estime means. Yeah, not a bad class, but just kind of middle of the road for me. Detroit Lions, I mean, they're not going to let corner be an issue long term. Terran Arnold, Aaron Glenn wants to run man coverage. Arnold, the best man coverage corner in this class. Love that, even if it does take the trade up. Rakestraw Jr. feels like some insurance there. Could be a guy that plays on the inside. I wonder if this means Brian Branch will stop playing slot, play more box safety. I like him in the nickel, so I don't know. This might also just be hey, he's our 3rd corner. Dude, at this point, if Carlton Davis gets hurt, we have a really solid guy who can step in. So maybe this is just, kind of an insurance policy. We'll find out. The tackle from the British Columbia, anytime they invest in the offensive line, I want to see what ends up happening. Maybe this is a Taylor Decker replacement. Maybe they want to move him inside. I'm interested. We'll talk about interior offensive line. Actually, let's just go ahead and jump to that because, man, the Lions are going to get an A. Spoiler alert. Christian Mahogany, I think, just replaces Kevin Zeitler in 1 year's time. It's so much of what I did with Zach Zinter mocking to the Lions in the 3rd round. They basically did the exact same thing with a guy similar positioning on my interior offensive line rankings, and they did in the 6th round. I mean, this is like an A value for sure for me. I think that's your Kevin Zeitler replacement in 1 year's time. Also, center other guard flexibility, so you do come with a little bit more wiggle room there. And then Sione Vaki, downhill, crashing safety, could play some running back. I wonder if they do play him 2 ways, but it's like a downhill, tone-setting safety. Again, kind of questions, where's Brian Branch going to play? But I think they're just adding bodies to the secondary to say, hey, we're a good team. You're going to have to throw against us. We're going to have a ton of dudes we can rotate in, and we're just not going to have our secondary be a reason why we lose games. Which, hey, if you're committed to that, go for it. And the Lions are not 1 foot in, 1 foot out. They're like, hey, we're going to revamp this secondary. It will not be the reason we lose games. And then Mekhi Wingo next to Ali McNeil could be scary, man. On like 3rd and 13s, just good luck guards and centers. Like super explosive. Love the pass rush upside there for Wingo. Just going to take some coaching. And I loved Lee McNeil coming out of NC State. Got a whole lot of 3-3-5 defense there. Caught a lot of double teams. They developed Lee McNeil. I also think the scheme change helped him. Now can they coach up Wingo and make that a nasty inside duo? I certainly hope so. Like I said, Detroit Lions, it's an A. Insert the Jesse Pinkman. He can't keep getting away with this meme. Brad Holmes. At this point, I've got to meet the man because he just continuously steals the NFL draft, and I just got to know how that man's mind works. All right, Green Bay Packers next up. Jordan Morgan, really safe pick there. Edgerrin Cooper, we mocked this a ton. Peyton Wilson, a couple different linebackers. Cooper, I like the upside there. Especially considering you look at Quay Walker, and it was like, kind of raw. Is he ready to play right away? They just played him right away. They'll probably do the same thing here with Edgerrin Cooper. Different linebackers, but kind of the similar narrative around them. Javon Bullard, I was saying, dude, if you give this team a nasty nickel, they're set. Bullard in a more man coverage-based, defense, and he will just light up tackles, wants his nose involved in every play, wants to be a part of the run game. Like, yeah, this feels like a great fit for that Packers defense. Nasty nickel corner for them. Marshawn Lloyd, not a guy I was super high on, but if Jordan Love can kind of pick up where he left off last year, he is this guy that's the QB of the future. Like, he might continue to see light boxes. He's also the RB2 off of Josh Jacobs. I don't mind that. Tyrone Hopper was, that's a little rich for my blood, kind of top 100. Maybe I was there preseason, being used as a blitzer. I'm very interested to see what the role is for Tyrone Hopper, because that was the number one thing he brought to the table for me, was like the pass rush juice. Not much else that I really, really love about Tyrone Hopper. So I want to know how the Packers are going to use him. Evan Williams, I'm intrigued by that safety ad, as well as Oladapo. Feels like one of those two guys could become a potential starter. I'm also not ruling out Anthony Johnson. Don't know why he fell to the 6th round last year. I liked him. Michael Pratt feels like the backup quarterback of the future for this team as well. And then, yep, there it is. Kalen King. If Javon Bullard doesn't work out, like Kalen King, I think I would have drafted him in the 7th round just for the shot of look, like I said about Derek Stingley, just because you have one elite year and nothing else matches up, corner is a position that comes with so much variance that if you did it once, you've got my interest. Now, Kalen King had a much steeper drop-off than DSJ those next 2 years at LSU, don't get me wrong. And this whole draft, the 40 was not great. The whole combine wasn't great for King. Senior Bowl was rough. All that stuff was not great for Kalen King. But there was good play in there in 2022, 23. So, can we get that out? I think it's going to have to be in the slot, so maybe the Packers can kind of coach him up. I think Javon Bullard's going to be their starting nickel, but maybe there's a world where Kalen King actually proves himself, and maybe he's the guy. To the Houston Texans, Kamari Lassiter, we mocked this a ton. This felt like he doesn't have the 40, but we're just going to play him in the slot. And he's got great coverage feel, great man coverage, and yeah, he's just going to take over the middle of the field. Love that fit. Blake Fisher, going to be interested to see what happens with Titus Howard. I think he's a better tackle than guard. Fisher's a right tackle, though, so I think that's potentially your right tackle of the future. Maybe this just signals that next time Howard's contract's up, Fisher's going to be his replacement. Kalen Bullock, man, love the center field ability, but just not a tackler. If there's a guy who can change that, D'Amico Ryans might be the dude. So this was the one landing spot that honestly I didn't mock it much, but this is the one place where Kalen Bullock could go where my ears are perked back up once again. Cade Stover, just a safe tight end option. Like that too, good inline blocker. Going to be a nice addition for the run game, and just solid, savvy, kind of Jason Witten type. Just going to work the middle of the field, soft spots in zone. Not much yards after the catch, but we'll do those dirty works. We'll have reliable hands for CJ Stroud. Also, another Ohio State guy to give Stroud. And then what was the other one? Solomon Byrd. I'm really interested by him as a extra depth piece on that defensive line. They've already made a lot of moves. Derek Barnett, Daniil Hunter, but Byrd as the 4th edge rusher, I'm intrigued by that a ton. So Houston, man, I really like this, especially given you trade back with Minnesota, you're getting that future second that then became Stephon Diggs. I am accounting that a little bit into the grade here. I'd go B plus to A minus, and I'm kind of teetering. I don't have the pluses and the minuses. I'll go B. I'm interested to see what Kalen Bullock is. If I could totally buy into the Bullock stuff, I was a little lower on him than most. This probably would have been an A, but he's kind of the thing that's kind of swinging me more B plus more than A minus. But again, would be a B plus. I just don't have pluses or minuses in today's video. To the Indianapolis Colts, Leon Talatu, I gave that an A in the first round. Adonai Mitchell, I'd give that an A. Mac Goncalves, I think there's something there maybe. I think Bernard Ryman's their starting left tackle of the future. I think they got a right tackle. I don't know. I think they're set at both those spots, but we'll find out. And then Tanner Bortolini could be a nice little developmental center, be a starter in a handful of years. We'll see. Anthony Gould, upside, big play, speedy receiver. I'm fascinated by that. Jalen Simpson, kind of interested to see what the safety room looks like. Him and as well as Garley's from Missouri. A couple different guys. Maybe one of them becomes the starter there. Yeah, all in all, just a solid draft. But really, it's like those first two picks are A, so it's like hard for me to kind of drop down from there. From Calvis, I think they got the tackle situation handled, so that felt a little rich for me. But Bordellini, I could see being a starter. Gould could be kind of like Paris Campbell. Let's just try that again as a gadget guy. This is another one. Man, I think those first two picks are just too good. I was B+, A-, that sort of range once again. But Latu and Mitchell are just too good at values. I think I got to lean towards the A. Those are the picks that matter the most. So Colts, congratulations. Chris Ballard, you've done it. To the Jacksonville Jaguars, trade down Brian Thomas Jr., a fit that made a ton of sense. And you get not only more picks this year, but Minnesota's 3rd and 4th next year. The 3rd could be somewhere in the 70s to early to mid 70s. Because again, Minnesota's starting a rookie or Sam Darnold next year. I don't know if the Vikings will be all that good. They got a good situation, they got a good head coach, but there's nothing guaranteeing the Vikings are going to be a very good team, right? They picked 12th this year, as is, So then also that 4th round pick could become somewhere in the early hundreds, mid hundreds, 108, kind of 110-ish range. So those could be good picks that we're talking about a lot next year for the Jags, at least when we get deeper and deeper in the draft season. Mason Smith, a little bit of a reach for me, but then Jaron Jones, I've been talking about this team needing a nickel corner. Jaron Jones be that, especially a man specialist, inside guy. Love that value. Javon Foster feels like, hey, if Cam Robinson doesn't play well, we're just going to plug in Foster, or he just becomes a replacement for Cam Robinson next year, as Robinson's in the last year of his contract. So I like the value with that. Not a huge Jordan Jefferson guy. And then Miles Cole in the 7th round. Trent Baalke's got to go get his interesting project build type, athleticism to body type guy. So yeah, all in all, I think a solid class. I really love the Thomas Jr. and Jaron Jones picks to this team. So I'm going to give the Jacksonville Jaguars a B, and I think we're going to be talking about that 3rd and 4th from Minnesota a decent bit next draft season, specifically the 3rd. To the Kansas City Chiefs, Xavier Worthy to the Chiefs was kind of the one spot where he would perk my ears the most. Kingsley Suamataia, really excited about what he could develop into. The Chiefs haven't done Wanya Morris still TBD, Luke Niang never broke out, so hopefully they get more progress with Suamataia, but he may have to start for them as soon as week 1, which I don't necessarily love, but I also like Suamataia, so we'll figure it out. Jared Wiley is like a number 2 tight end, learning for Travis Kelce. Really fascinated to see where that goes. Jaden Hicks is like a downhill box safety, can play some man coverage for you, tight end eraser type. Love that value. Hunter Norzad, they have the best center in football in Creed Humphrey, but Norzad also experienced a guard. So I think, honestly, this last year Penn State playing center was probably my favorite of Norzad to watch, but maybe they do move him back to guard. Kamal Hayden, big, athletic corner, coming off his best year at Tennessee. This is your L'Jarius Sneed replacement, and damn it, they did it again. And this is like a total Spags guy, big, physical, long, enough athleticism. This is a total Spagnuolo fit, and they do it in the day 3. Why do we keep letting these Spags corners fall to day 3 where the Chiefs can pluck them up? And then C.J. Hansen from Holy Cross. So hitting a lot of positions of need. I think they got solid value. Not a huge trade up with the Bills. Really just a 3rd, 4th swap. Good for the Bills. Kind of good for the Chiefs. This would be a B+ for sure. B+, no doubt. Going to be really interested to see what Xavier Worthy, how much he sees the field next year. Part of that's also how much is Rashee Rice? How big of a suspension does he play at all next year? All that sort of stuff. But the Chiefs have turned into this yards after the catch, work the middle of the field offense, and now they have 2 guys that you have to respect their over-the-top speed, which to me feels like, okay, they just made their strength that much harder to defend. Because, what are you, not going to defend Worthy and Hollywood deep? Because Pat Mahomes will make you pay for that. But now because you're respecting their deep speed, it makes it that much harder to cover the middle of the field. Stop those yak weapons. Rally and tackle against those guys because I'm all the way in the end zone defending Xavier Worthy. So I'm really interested to see what that means and what the Chiefs offense looks like next year with another sub 4.3 guy, the fastest man at the NFL Combine, 4.21 speed, Xavier Worthy. To the Los Angeles Chargers, I'd give Joe Alt a B+. Solid pick. I'd have gone Neighbors, but I think they took the right offensive lineman here. Ladd McConkey, I love that ad. Inside out flags, could be a deep threat. Feels like a really nice compliment to kind of Josh Palmer, who I think is going to be more of a possession-ish type, poor man's Michael Pittman kind of role. And then Quentin Johnston, I think you're just going to have to use the yak weapon. I don't know if there's anything more really to Quentin Johnston, which hurts for me to say, but he was a really nice yak player and forced a lot of missed tackles at TCU. That might just have to be his role. And then Ladd McConkey does everything else. I like that. Junior Colson, this is one I predicted it would happen in the 2nd round. Happens in the 3rd, but Jesse Minter, he needed his linebacker. You always see these defensive defensive coordinators when they get hired, or like new defensive coaches, head coaches, they start with linebacker for whatever reason. And I felt like Jesse Minter was going to make sure they got their guy. I'm not Tareeb still, not really sure about that one. But then they get Cam Hart, and I think Cam Hart, okay, that's the big body corner that I wanted to see them at. So I'm more excited to see Hart in that defense than Still, but that's okay. They got two guys that could potentially fill that role. And then Kamani Vidal, RB6 for me. I'm a big Vidal guy. I could easily see a world where he's starting pretty soon. I know they got Dobbins. I know they got Edwards. They're just kind of trotting out this, Baltimore backfield, retread Baltimore backfield. But I think Vidal could start and become the leading snap share guy by the end of year one, really. And then Brendan Rice, for a team that needs a big physical wide receiver, Rice somehow falls all the way to the 7th round. I wasn't a big Brendan Rice guy, but this felt a little much for his fall. So go to the Chargers for snatching that up. And I mean, USC stays local. Also, we got to talk about one more receiver, Cornelius Johnson. He might just be designated deep threat, kind of Donovan Peoples-Jones-esque, but it's still one more receiver that they could definitely use. And Quentin Johnston's not really that, so Cornelius Johnson could kind of be their DPJ. And then Brendan Rice, hopefully we get to see that athleticism be a little bit more consistent than it was at USC. But a couple of late swings of the bat at receiver that could totally pay off. Plus Ladd McConkey, Joe Walt, Junior Colson. A lot of what they did here. Cam Hart, Kamani Vidal. Los Angeles Chargers, congratulations. You are going to get an A for the first draft in the Joe Horowitz, Jim Harbaugh era. To the other Los Angeles team, Jared Verse, Braden Fisk, and then I want to talk about Brendan Jackson and Tyler Davis to start us off. Look, there's just no way to replace Aaron Donald 1-for-1. So it felt like the Rams were like, man, Donald basically gives us a production of 4 dudes. And damn it, now that he's gone, we got to replace him with 4 dudes. Verse may not have the biggest upside of this edge group, but got one of the highest floors. Just a straight power rusher, can win with the bull rush, the long arm, the speed to power. And he's different than Byron Young in that regard. Braden Fisk plus Kobe Turner. I don't think either one of them is going to be a great run defender, but that's what you get Tyler Davis in the 6th round for. He'll play the early downs. He'll be a run stopper. And then you get to 3rd and 10, and you get Fisk and his explosiveness plus Kobe Turner on the field. Love that. And then Brendan Jackson, I think another guy kind of more in line with Tyler Davis, just at the edge spot, early down guy. Let him play the run. I could see a world where basically, and I think Byron Young's a solid run defender too, but Verse, Jackson, and Byron Young are probably all in the field, and Tyler Davis all in the field for early downs. And you're going to have kind of this platoon swap where 3rd and 13, or hey, it's 4th quarter, we're up 28-14, we'll just keep our pass rushers out, and you'll see Kobe. You'll see Braden Fisk. You'll obviously still see Verse out there too. And then that's when it's oh God. They got a lot of pass rush juice here. We got to get the ball out quick. Other picks here. Blake Corum's interesting. And shout out to Marcus from That Franchise Guy channel. Nailed this one. His comp for Blake Corum was Kyron Williams. And now I'm starting to think, damn, they're just not going to extend Kyron Williams. They're just going to let him walk. And I really want to know what his market looks like once he is a free agent. Because Blake Corum, in a lot of ways, does make sense to be that Kyron Williams replacement. Cam Kinchins, look, he played a lot of hero ball at Miami. I think that kind of ruined his stock ultimately. I think especially in, probably a lot of quarters still, but probably a lot of zone, but specifically, let's say it's a lot of quarters for the Rams, where he's just kind of playing an alleyway. You're going to let him do that and be a playmaker at the same time. He doesn't have to win games single-handedly for this defense. Just play this lane. If you feel like you can make a play, go take that shot. I think Cam Kinchins, we're going to look back at this and be like, damn, what, last pick of the 3rd round? Second to last pick of the 3rd round? Are you serious? Wow, how did we let the Rams do this? I think he's going to become a steal. I think it's just because he's going to have an isolated role. He's not going to have to carry a defense. It's shades of very different positions and obviously different levels of competition. We're now talking about this translation. But all last draft cycle, Jahmyr Gibbs was my RB2. And it's because at Wake at Georgia Tech, he was just having to play hero ball. He had to win games for Georgia Tech. Then he goes to Bama and it's that super explosive, crazy athlete with good vision and also enough contact balance. Now he just gets to follow blocks. Oh, okay, now you're going to really see it. I think Cam Kinchins in a more simplified role, less hero ball involved, and you get to let him take chances. I think Cam Kinchins is going to become a steal this draft class. We talked about Tyler Davis. Bo Lemire, I could see him becoming a starter for them in a couple of years. I think he's a good fit in that blocking scheme. So the Rams, it may not be the sexiest draft, but man, it'd be that B+ to A- again. I think the NFL is getting really good at drafting, and I think the Rams draft strategy is just rock solid. Good to see them back in the 1st round. It'd be a B+ if I had the plus with us. To the Vegas Raiders. I think there's a world where the Brock Bowers pick can coexist. It turns out, I guess I didn't turn on my wireless mic when I was grading this pick, so I had to delete it because there was no audio. But I started out C+, and then kind of became B- mid-short. I think he's just going to play slot receiver for them, which, dude, I think he could also play tight end and coexist with Michael Mayer. They're different guys. And honestly, if your knock on Brock Bowers was that he's light and can't block, it's good to have Michael Mayer there to do that and then play Brock Bowers off of that. But let's just say he plays slot receiver, and he's your kind of Hunter Renfrow replacement. Devontae, Jacoby Myers, Brock Bowers, and Michael Mayer. Okay, yeah, you're selling me on it. I love the idea of that fit. I'm starting to get there with that fit. I don't love it, but really my rationale was like, he's a blue chipper for me. So yeah, I know you drafted a tight end in the second round, but draft the blues, and eventually it'll kind of work out. Jackson Powers-Johnson, apparently they announced him as a guard, so figure on him playing left guard, Dylan Parham playing right guard. And if that's the case, all right, fine. I'll see what Thayer Mumford's all about at right tackle. See where him and Miller are good enough tackle tandem. JPJ, Andre James, Dylan Parham. I think that interior trio could also work. Delmar Glaze, I was a big Glaze guy, so and for the sake of being positive, we'll skirt past that. Richardson from Mississippi State, size speed freak, good competition there for Jacorian Bennett, Jack Jones, Eichenberg, safe, high floor, solid player. Don't know if he'll be anything special just because kind of lacks size, lacks high-end athleticism, but really high football IQ guy. Dylan Laube is a nice receiving back. I like that a good bit as well. So I think a solid draft here for the Las Vegas Raiders. I'm a big Jax Powers-Johnson guy, so that would put it in this kind of B range. This would be a B- if we had more, kind of tiers to what we're doing here with the Bs, but B- there for the Las Vegas Raiders. Miami Dolphins. Shout out to the Dolphins fans. Had a ton of Dolphins fans saying, we're taking an edge at 21, and you guys were spot on there. And this is a team that's going to put up points, so I don't hate this whatsoever. Like, there's a package I want to see where, hey, Miami's up by 21. I want to see Jalen Phillips, my edge one that year, by the way, Bradley Chubb, who I love, by the way, and Chop Robinson all in the field together. And just like, you're down by 21, you need chunk plays, but you got to get the ball out in less than 2.2 seconds because these three guys are all screaming at you. So I think it makes a lot of sense. Like I don't think you saw this in a whole lot of mocks. Maybe outside of people who were really tapped into what Miami was doing tend to be offensive line in the first round. But it makes a ton of sense. We're gonna put up points. Good luck keeping up with us with this pass rush. Patrick Paul, I think, could be a nice Teron Armstead replacement eventually. We'll see what happens with him. He's definitely not a guard to me. So is he just kind of a patch fill-in swing tackle here in the second round? Interesting. Does Austin Jackson move inside? I don't know. He feels like he's kind of finding his stride there at right tackle. So I want to see how this inter-offensive line kind of plays out. Mo Kamara, kind of same thing with Chop Robinson. And so really, I want to see a 3rd and 13 set with it's Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb on the inside, Chop and Mo Kamara playing the NASCAR package, lining up, way out wide of the tackles. I want to see those four on the field at the same time. Jalen Wright feels like a Raheem Mostert replacement whenever his contract's up. Wright plus Devon Achane in that running back backfield, and you're using Achane in the slot, put him in motion, jet sweep. You're using him all over the field, really. And you're just putting the ball in his hands where he can get a head start. Wright plus Achane's a really fun combination. It feels very Miami for them to do this, but I actually love the idea of it. And then they got the Washingtons, man. Like Malik Washington, Taj Washington, may not be like the most gaudy athletes, but look, Braxton Berrios is a fine 3, but I think Malik Washington might be a better option by back half of year 1. And Taj Washington might as well. And he's another guy, kind of like we talked about Leatu Latu this whole draft cycle. His in-game athleticism score is not as far down as you would think. It's actually up there with some of the best guys in this class. So on the field, Taj Washington moves well enough, and he's a sharp route runner, good hands, nice yak weapon, all the same stuff we're talking about Malik Washington. So now all of a sudden, nobody's talking about him because they're kind of later picks, but it went from Miami having 2 really great receivers, and then Braxton Berrios is the 3, to where it's like they got 2 studs, Berrios, okay, and then 2 guys that I feel really confident about. Like, hey, if they're on the field, they're just going to do their job, and they're just going to be smart guys who get open with enough athleticism to make things happen after the catch. I like that draft a lot. Sorry, I didn't give it a grade there for Miami. It was a little off the ball and a little different than what I thought. Feels like I feel like interior offensive line might become something they want to address or need to address. Maybe they make a trade. Maybe there's still some free agents they're looking to sign. But I'm going to give Miami a B. If the interior offensive line doesn't become an issue, then I retroactively make this an A-. To the Minnesota Vikings, if you told me there was a first round where they got J.J. McCarthy and Dallas Turner, I'd been like, what? How? So that's a huge win. They did give up a lot in regards to the draft capital chart or trade chart to get Dallas Turner, but I kind of love the idea of Brian Flores going from a season where he had to show 8 pre-snap every play last year and either rush 8 or he drop 8 and only rush 3. This year, it feels like he can still kind of play that game, and Brian Flores wants to blitz. And when you have an Ivan Pace, you blitz that linebacker, and Flores has always kind of had that MO coming from New England. He wants to blitz those inside linebackers, and Pace is a perfect fit for that. But now it's also like, you could just rush 4. You could show blitz, rush 4, and that 4 includes, let's say it's 3rd and 10, Jonathan Grenard, Andrew Van Ginkel, and Dallas Turner? Oh, yeah. Okay. And now you're dropping 7 into coverage, and, last year when they would just show 8, only rush 3, if you didn't get the quarterback to panic, it really wasn't all that effective, and it felt like the pass rush didn't get to where it needed to. Now it feels like you could rush 3 or 4 and get home with those guys. So I actually kind of like it a ton. They did give up a lot to get Turner. That does ding the grade a lot. Or a bit, at least. It dings it a bit. Kyrie Jackson, I think, is a great scheme fit there for Brian Flores. Don't know how he fell in the 4th round. That size, that athleticism, I'm here for it. Walter Roos, I want to see where they end up playing him inside out. Don't really feel like they need a tackle, given they have one of the best tackle tandems, one of the top 3 tackle tandems in the league, in my opinion. So maybe he does move inside. Will Reichard, Greg Joseph's gone, so they need a kicker. Why not get the NCAA all-time scoring leader? Not a bad call there whatsoever. And then a couple of other transfer players with Juergens and Drake Rodriguez. But it's made up by those first 3 picks. McCarthy, Turner, Jackson. The team's 3 biggest needs. And I think they got, McCarthy at 10 was a little surprising. Expensive trade up, but they got Turner at 17 when it felt like he could go as high as 8. And then Kyrie Jackson in the 4th round. This would be a B+. But the trade value, we can call this just a B. Just because it wasn't expensive move up for Turner. And now this team has their 1st round pick and 2 5s next year. I think that's 1 first and 2 5s, so they're probably going to trade back next year out of the 1st round or move back substantially in the 1st round. So I'll give it a B just because the trade value does ding the value a little bit. But I love the idea of them getting Dallas Turner on top of those 2 free agent signings. All right, then we get to New England Patriots. Drake May, my QB2, and my Tier 1, one of my guys. Jalen Polk, receiver 7, one of my guys. Javon Baker, you get him in the 4th round. I had him ranked. I think I had him 1 spot ahead of Troy Franklin, one of my guys. And then you get to the other side of this draft where I'm like, Kalen Wallace in the 3rd round? All right, interesting. Layden Robinson. Look, Layden Robinson was on my interior offensive line way too early rankings 2023 draft, like a year ago. And I was like, this dude has a ton of things that you love. The size, I think he can move well, and he's a mauler, and it just hasn't really come together. Maybe New England thinks that, hey, we're going to take all that skill and that size and that strength, and we'll make it into a player. But it's also the year after they drafted, 4 interior offensive linemen last year, and they just re-signed Michael Onwenu. So I just didn't think guard was something they had to address, and also I didn't think Layden Robinson was the guy to take right there in the 4th round. Marcus Dial, I'm interested to see what he could be for this team. Joe Milton, this is the pick they got from Jacksonville, so it's just hilarious. Joe Milton for Mac Jones, that's just absolute comedy. And then Jaheim Bell as like a Jonnu Smith replacement. I mean, they didn't get much out of Jonnu Smith, but if they decided they wanted to in that role, Jaheim Bell's a hell of an ad there. So, look, it all comes down to Drake May, what he's going to be. I think the situation needed improvement. Polk and Javon Baker, to me, Baker's going to be Devontae Parker, who can separate more. Polk's going to be this guy that move all over the field, inside and out. And I think it was Doug Kyde who posted their PFF grades on deep passes, balls 20 yards down the field, and they both had a 99.9. I don't know how that's possible. That's insane. But also, hopefully, if that translates to the next level, 2 guys that can help force the issue, push the ball deep down the field for Drake May. So I'm going to give New England an A. I'll do it. No, I can't do it. Sorry. B+. Sorry. Once I put up the A, I saw Wallace and Robinson. I was like, no, sorry. If I'm going to give you an A, I got to really like your picks, or you just have to have an ungodly amount of draft capital like the Cardinals, and I liked 80% of what they did. So it's a strong B+. It's a strong B+ here for New England. Love the 2 receivers. Love Drake May. And I'm intrigued by some of the day 3 picks. It's just those offensive linemen, Robinson and Wallace. If they work out, I'll swallow my words. This is an A class for sure, but I'm just a little hesitant to buy into that. New Orleans Saints, Talise Fuanga feels like a nice Ramczyk replacement. If Ramczyk plays, just play this man at right guard, and he's an upgrade over Andres Pete. So no matter what, I think you're getting an upgrade somewhere on that New Orleans offensive line. Kool-Aid McKinstry falling to the 2nd round. Yeah, you trade up, but whether or not they move on from Marshawn Lattimore, I love the idea that this team's adding a corner. Alontae Taylor was a little hit and miss in the slot, so maybe they just move the other day 3 corner. They drafted another day 2 corner, 3rd round guy that they drafted. I can't remember who it is, but he played pretty well on the outside last year. Maybe you move him inside to play the slot, but maybe this does also open up the door for a Marshawn Lattimore trade. I'd be really curious to see who would want to make that move. Probably for 2025 3rd, kind of like the L'Jarius Sneed trade to the Titans. I have to think about it. So maybe we'll do a trades video down the line. But Kool-Aid to the Saints at 41. 40. Sorry, really good value. Spencer Rattler going to this system. Clint Kubiak coming from Shanahan. His dad's system too, kind of in that Shanahan tree. I'm intrigued. And man, if Derek Carr starts shit in the bed, we could see Rattler by the end of this year, and I'm kind of, no disrespect to Derek Carr, I'm kind of ready to see it. I want to see that. So this guy feels like he's matured. He plays better within an offense now than he ever has, but had a terrible offensive line at South Carolina. You have Antoine Wells get hurt, and it's really kind of Xavier Legette, and you're kind of piecing it and Jaheim Bell. You're kind of piecing it together otherwise. Like, now he goes to an offense with Olave, Rashichi. He can make big plays. Hopefully the offensive line takes a step forward this year. I want to know what Rattler looks like in this Shanahan tree offense. Like, I'm very fascinated. Bub Means is a very fascinating kind of day 3 receiver. I know everyone kind of has their, like, this is my day 3 receiver. Bub Means was a lot of people's choice for that, so I want to see what that looks like. Christian Boyd I thought was really good value. And then also I think the Jalen Ford pick could be, a solid add, at least a solid special teamer for this team. But these first 3 picks, especially with no third and no fourth, like, I think this team got really good value. I'd give it a B+, so just throwing the imaginary plus there. I think the Saints did a really nice job of this draft. Then we get to the Giants, Malik Neighbors. Tyler Newman was one that I would mock basically kind of once every 3 mocks, but it made a lot of sense. Shane Bowen coming from Tennessee, had Kevin Byard pretty much that whole tenure. Wants that center field, playmaking safety. Tyler Newman's that. This team feels like it has a ton of slot receivers and slot corners, so I don't know where Andrew Phillips fits into the mix, but I love Andrew Phillips, and I think they got him in a good spot. Theo Johnson as a potential Darren Waller replacement if he does decide to retire. I like that value. Tyrone Tracy is going to be leaned on pretty heavily. This team signed Devin Singletary, right? So this feels like the great spot for Tyrone Tracy, this nice like receiving back guy. Devin Singletary feels like a nice mentor for him. So yeah, solid draft. Really glad they got Malik Neighbors. Kind of feels like Dable got a Diggs type, but with more explosiveness. Like, it's crazy as that is to say. So, and I like Newman, middle of the second round. Phillips is a good football player. We'll figure out where he plays. Theo Johnson, Tyrone Tracy. I'd give this an A-. I'd give this an A- here for the Giants. And, I mean, I think Neighbors going to be a stud for that team. So that's kind of weighing heavily into this. Jets, Olu Fashanu learned from Tyron Smith. Couldn't imagine a better outcome for him, really. Malachi Corley, this yard after the catch, bully ball. Just make it easy for A-Rod, right? Get the ball to Corley in space. That's a lot of fun. And then you get to the running backs, and it's like, dude, you got Izzy Abanikanda, you got Breece Hall. I think you're good on running back. But Braylon Allen, I said, man, you put him in a zone scheme. I'm listening. Now he's in one. Isaiah Davis was everyone's favorite, day 3 sleeper running back. Now he's in this blocking. I don't know what's going on. And then the Jordan Travis of this all. One I think could be a solid backup, and assuming he comes back healthy and can play, relatively soon. If something happened to Rodgers, I think that's a solid backup option. I'm still interested to see if there's maybe another guy they want to kind of bring in, but I can see where Travis is just the day 1 backup. And I was kind of hoping he'd go to Seattle, but then they make the Howell trade. I think there's still some upside there in Travis. I think he's a good leader. I think you can iron out his accuracy. And I mean, Aaron Rodgers is a good guy to learn from if you're trying to become more of an accurate guy. Quantez Stiggers, I'm really interested in this because CFL Rookie of the Year gets 5 picks last year. The CFL field is wider. So everyone's kind of dealing with almost everyone's kind of a slot corner. It's such a wide field that you have to respect any area of space a receiver can take. So could Quantez Stiggers be this team's slot corner? I think Michael Carter II's been a good nickel, but could Stiggers be an upgrade over that? Maybe. So really interesting draft. I like Fashanu because Tyron Smith hasn't played a full season since 2015, so I think he sees the field immediately. Malachi Corey is a very different receiver than what they have, but he makes that offense easier for Rodgers. Get the ball out of his hands quick. Like that a ton. Allen Davis feels a little redundant, but I want to see what that is. Davis, I think, Travis, is an interesting backup option for this team. Stiggers, I think there's some upside there. B+ here for the New York Jets. I think they addressed a lot of needs while making that offense a little bit more well-balanced. I'm really interested to see what those running backs and what all this means for that backfield in New York. The Philadelphia Eagles, Howie Roseman. You can't keep getting away with this. One last time. That's the last time I'll mention that meme and a clip from one of the greatest shows of all time. But Quinyon Mitchell, he falls right into their lap at 22. A guy that makes a ton of sense and had him mocked to the Eagles. There were a lot of mocks where the Eagles moved up to get Quinyon Mitchell. So that's a steal. And his zone experience in a Vic Fangio defense, plus his size, plus his athleticism. James Bradbury, move over. That's his day 1 starter. I'm sorry, he's just legitimately better than James Bradbury right now. And then you get Cooper DeJean, who I mocked the Eagles in the first round in my final mock, and you get him in the second round. So this almost makes me think he's going to play safety. He'll probably be in rotations with Reed Blankenship and company on the back end. He could also just be Vic Fangio's Javon Holland, which I know they brought back Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. I totally understand that, but Holland can play some nickel. He can play some box safety. He could play some over the top. And they'll move Chauncey Gardner-Johnson around, but you'd also just have Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Really, here's what I think this boils down to. And this kind of sucks for Reed Blankenship because he might not see the field a whole lot. But Vic Fangio is going to run a lot of quarters. So let's just say our starting outside cornerbacks are Darius Slay, Quinyon Mitchell. Love that fit. I think they're going to be able to play their alleyways high level. That's going to be sick. And then those middle 2 fourths are going to be Chauncey Gardner-Johnson and Cooper DeJean. and their playmaking ability, their athleticism, their ability to go make plays over the top, but also, like, those guys can come crashing downhill and lay the wood, so I'm just looking at this quarter setup and those 4 guys and their 4 lanes, and I'm like, oh God, this is going to be scary. And then you throw in Jalix Hunt to a team that knows how to draft and develop defensive linemen, and hopefully they get more edge production. Felt like the edge group kind of dwindled down in production as the season went on. If they get back on track to where Philadelphia normally is, plus Vic Fangio with these DBs they've added, wow, this defense could be insane this year. Will Shipley feels like a Kenneth Gainwell replacement in a year's time. Aeneas Smith, really nice yards after the catch weapon. Tweener, slot receiver, running back type. Jeremiah Trotter Jr. following his dad's footstep, going to Philadelphia. Another smaller linebacker, so I don't think there's a world where him and Kobe Dean can coexist at the same time, but not a bad value whatsoever. And then Johnny Wilson in the 6th round. Minimum, like, red zone weapon, just throw the big guy out there. I think it's more about separation, but you could still do that. But also in a world where, like, Dallas Goedert can play inline tight end, do you just have Johnny Wilson add 10 pounds and make him your tight end too? This team has prioritized having 2 tight ends. I could see where, like, they just bulk Wilson up, get up to 240, 245, and have him be like kind of Darren Waller's a tight end too. And now this team really gets to play bully ball and have a mismatch of Johnny Wilson at, let's just say 6'6", 240, defended by a tight end or a safety. That feels like a mismatch waiting to happen. So the fact that the league let them get Johnny Wilson in the 6th round feels a little unfair because they feel like a team that will figure it out. And Dylan McMahon could be a potential, 6th offensive lineman, 3rd interior or 4th interior guy, just kind of glue piece, or maybe a potential starter in a couple of years' time. We'll find out. But I like the value of him, late day 3 as well. So, damn it. Someone's got to stop the Philadelphia Eagles from winning every NFL draft, but they're up there with one of the best classes this year, as well as my Pittsburgh Steelers. So now where I'm in anguish talking about, the Ravens get an A, the Bengals a strong B+, the Eagles get an A, yak. Now I get to brag. Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, these first 5 picks, Fautanu, Frazier, Wilson, McCormick, even Logan Lee, pardon my language. All 6 of these feel like, one, good value. I think they got him in a good spot that I'm surprised Fautanu was there at 20. Frazier, I didn't think would make it to 51. Roman Wilson at 60, or what was it, 50, I'm trying to remember, the 67 was where they took him. Surprised by that. Peyton Wilson at 98. How is he there? Mason McCormick in the 4th round? What? All of those feel like really good value, but also all tone setters. Like, this team wants to be this smash mouth, old school, 80s Steelers, steel curtain. They want to have that tone with them. And all these picks lean into that. Well, also, it didn't feel like you reached down the board to go get one of them. So Fautanu is going to play left tackle, I would assume, and Broderick Jones a year into his career. I think he'd be a better left tackle, but let's just figure it out. Let's coach him up. He'll play right tackle. Zach Frazier, that's the day 1 starter at center, and it's going to be Daniels and Sayamalu next to him. Roman Wilson, that's going to be your tight end too, and a guy who literally brags about no block, no rock. This feels like an Arthur Smith pick through and through. Peyton Wilson's probably a day 1 starter for this team, and if he stays healthy, he'd probably be a pretty solid one. Then Mason McCormick, that's probably your James Daniels replacement next year. Logan Lee, early down run stopper right there. And then we end with Ryan Watts. I'm not really too pressed about Ryan Watts. So I wish this team could have gotten a corner, specifically a nickel corner. I feel like that's the one thing we missed. Could we have gotten a Jarvis Brownlee Jr. or someone like that? I wish. But nevertheless, I can't complain. I mean, huge upgrades. 2 starters for the interior offensive line, a future starter in Mason McCormick, a starting linebacker, a number 2 receiver, and Arthur Smith runs, I think it was 18%, 3 receiver sets, dating back to when he was the Titans offensive coordinator, so 3 years in Tennessee, 2 years in Atlanta, or the other way around, 2 years in Tennessee, 3 years in Atlanta, sorry. He ran 3 receiver sets 18% of the time. So it's going to be Roman Wilson, it's going to be George Pickens, and Wilson's totally one of his types. He's smaller, but he wants to block. So my Pittsburgh Steelers, I give them an A. And at the end of this, I'll go ahead and rank real quick. Yeah, we got a couple other teams who could kind of factor into this mix, but I think Pittsburgh and Philadelphia are probably the 2 teams I'd put at the very top of best NFL drafts. Seattle Seahawks, love that they went Byron Murphy here. Now they're just, like, I think this is Mike McDonald's Justin Madubuike of the future for Seattle, but now you just got a handful in the interior. Draymond Jones, Byron Murphy, Leonard Williams. I love that interior, and it's just going to give teams an absolute headache. Guards and centers are not going to look forward to playing Seattle. Christian Haynes should have been drafted in the 2nd round. Wouldn't have surprised me if he was the surprise late 1st round guy. This is a plug-and-play starter, either over Anthony Bradford or Laken Tomlinson. It's a 1-year deal for Tomlinson, so if it ends up being him, I'm not mad about that. Haynes plus Bradford is your long-term pieces. I'm excited about that, and then we'll find out what Oluwatimi's all about. Trace Knight, whatever. A.J. Barner, 2nd tight end, good blocking guy. That makes some sense. Nehemiah Pritchett plus DJ James. This is another team I kind of want to talk about, like, New coach coming in. I wonder if, like Sean Payton, does he want Javonte Williams there? Does he feel like a fit? Williams was there before Payton got there. Well, obviously, first year Mike McDonald. I wonder what he feels about Tariq Woolen. And I wonder if he sees Woolen as a fit. And maybe these Auburn guys maybe start competing right away. Could Woolen be someone we see dealt around training camp or at the deadline for, a team that needs a corner? I'm just keeping my eyes out there. I'm not predicting it or anything, but it's just something I want to monitor. Pritchett and James might just be depth pieces, but they feel like very schematically different corners than Tariq Woolen. So I'm just very interested to see where that goes and if Woolen may be someone that is eventually dealt. And then that's pretty much all I want to talk about here with the Seattle Seahawks. But those first 2 picks for me are just like love, 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 love. If you're on the first 4th round pick, Barner's fine. The Auburn corners are solid. This is a good B+. And the majority, 90% of that B+ is those first 2 picks. I love the fact they got Murphy and Haynes. Like, you want to talk about tone setters? Seattle did some of that with their first 2 picks. Oh, Ricky Pearsall, I had a couple tweets out there, so you can check the receipts on this, where I was like, I don't know if people are calling any of the receivers a surprise first-round pick, but Ricky Pearsall would be mine. Boom, he gets in the first round. He's a great scheme fit for Kyle Shanahan. Shanahan and McVay, they need, like, the scheme on paper will get you open, but if you're an actual separator, that plus the scheme, you're going to get open. That's exactly what Pearsall is. 6'1", 190, good size. He can play on the outside. He can play inside. But it's the 6'6", 4'3" cone that you see, and his suddenness out of breaks, plus his hands. I don't know if it's Ayuk or Samuel who's going to be on the move, but I do think one of those guys gets dealt here in the coming weeks. Maybe one of them to Buffalo, and I'm kind of thinking it's going to be Debo. And then this team's just going to roll out like right-running assassins of Pearsall and Ayuk. I might be wrong. It may be Ayuk that's on his way out. But also they go back to receiver later with Jacob Cowing. Could be a nice yards after the catch guy. A little small, but ton of big playability and a ton of long speed. Renardo Green was a guy that I was super high on. Glad to see he went late second. And now this team that, let's say their pass rush gets back on track. Nick Bosa doesn't, for whatever reason, just didn't have a whole lot of sacks last year. I felt like he was uber productive regards pass rush win rate, had a ton of pressures, had a ton of hurries, just didn't convert to sacks for whatever reason. Kind of an anomaly year for him. But let's say that pass rush gets back on track. Those do convert to sacks for Bosa. And now they have Charvarius Ward, who wants to go in your face and shut you up and play physical. And Renardo Green wants to do the same thing. So those two guys playing at the line of scrimmage, jamming receivers, and going stride for stride with them down the field. Plus what we normally associate a high-level pass rush defense in San Francisco. It's a perfect fit. And now the defense gets that much scarier. Dominic Pooney, high-end athlete, great 20-yard short shuttle. I think he probably plays left guard, but either guard spot, maybe he eventually becomes a center for this team. Great scheme fit. That's a huge upgrade over Aaron Banks, so I'm hoping it's at left guard. Malik Mustafa, high floor safety, high IQ guy, may not be the world's biggest or the world's fastest or anything like that, but sure tackler, can line up all over the field. He's Nate Tice's safety one. He's John Ledger's safety one. So he was in my top 10 safeties, but he's got some fans out there. U of R transfer to Wake Forest. I always love seeing those guys, small school to big school, that make that transition. Feels like they can make that leap to the NFL that much better. Also, shout out to the U of R. I live in Richmond, Virginia, so always got to shout out those Spiders. Isaac Arendo, shout out Brett Coleman. He's talking about, man, this guy's a perfect fit for his own blocking scheme. To which Kyle Shanahan says, retweet. Boom, that's your Elijah Mitchell replacement whenever his contract's up. Love the frame, love the athleticism. And even if he's not Elijah Mitchell's replacement and they keep Mitchell around, CMC, Mitchell, and then a little bit more physicality with Garendo, plus the straight line speed, that the scheme is going to get him into space. And then his athleticism will take it the rest of the way. Fantastic landing spot. And they didn't have to do it in the second round. They didn't reach for that like Tyrion whatever from LSU a couple years back. I was like, whoa, what the hell did you do drafting him in the second round? They just let Garendo fall into their lap in the fourth. Thank you. Much better process this time from John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan. And that's pretty much all I want to talk about here for the 49ers. But Pearsall, Green, Pooney, Mustafa, Garendo, Cowing. I love all six of those. San Francisco 49ers, you're getting an A. And I'm not really factoring this into the grade, but if you disagree with me on an A, throw in the fact that, let's say they do trade Debo or Ayuk, and that becomes a second-round pick next year. Let's just put it in the middle ground. Debo would probably be second, third. I don't know. I'm guessing. Ayuk might fetch you at first, so let's just split the middle and say you got a future second. If you get these first six names and a second-round pick, another top 50 pick, let's just call it top 60 pick next year, how could you not love this class? Three more teams to talk about. Tampa Bay, this is the second to last NFC team. Okay. We got Graham Barton started off, nice safe pick. Chris Braswell, I had my last mock. That makes a ton of sense. This team needs another edge rusher. I think he's just now kind of coming into his 3-4 body, so I think he's going to get better with another year or two of experience. Tyke Smith, so, Izzy was a solid nickel corner, but I thought they could do better there. Tyke Smith, to me, like plug and play, nickel corner, ton of flexibility. You could move him around the field. Him and Antoine Winfield Jr. could give offenses some headaches. Jalen McMillan is a power slot. Love that. Doesn't mean Chris Godwin's probably going to play a little bit more on the outside, but But I'm also content with that. I don't think that's a bad thing. He is just typically more productive on the inside. But we're talking about in this Liam Cohen offense, you can run a lot of tight set to make all these things kind of work with all these guys. Bucky Irving, shout out Trevor Sikkema. He was a big Irving guy, and he's a Tampa Bay fan, so I know he was amped about seeing this fourth-round pick come across. I can see a world where him and Rachaad White are a solid running back tandem moving forward. So it's a solid class. Like, I am not upset by this. This is a strong B. This is like textbook B. 85 out of 100, just solid. I think Jason Light he has a habit of this. It doesn't always wow me, other than like the 2019 draft, Wirfs and Winfield, I think it was. That was an A class because they nailed those first two picks and they were major positions of need. But most of his other classes are just like, damn, that's smart. Okay, that makes sense. That dude's going to play pretty early. It's just like, okay, damn, there's just a lot of sound logic, it feels like, behind his drafts. Tennessee Titans, last AFC team to talk about. I'm going to take this B off the screen and get out of your way. J.C. Latham feels like a scheme fit. He was my OT5, but any off the tackle you put in the hands of Bill Callahan, like, I'm giving you a half-grade bump of whatever I would have put it at. So yeah, I'm very intrigued to see what Latham looks like over at right tackle. And I also want to know, are you moving Skoronski to left tackle? Are you giving him a shot to do that? Or is it just going to be, okay, we'll figure out left tackle when we get there in training camp or whatever? Devondre Sweat felt like a little bit of a, well, honestly, I had him mostly going kind of late 40s to end of the second round before the DWI. And then post DWI, I was like mid to late third, maybe fourth round range. So this feels a lot earlier than I would have expected. But at the same time, I'm like, dude, you already have Jeffrey Simmons there who commands double teams. Devondre Sweat in his size alone, I think he's a better pass rusher than some people are giving him credit. He's going to command double teams. So now I'm like, damn, like, for a team that's kind of trying to figure out edge and get more out of guys not named Harold Landry, when you're double teaming two guys on the interior, it's one-on-ones for Landry and it's one-on-ones for the other dude, so we're having to double team one of those two. And that's maybe the other advantage here. If you're thinking about double teaming Sweat, that means maybe Jeffrey Simmons is getting more one-on-ones. Or you're double teaming Simmons, and 360 pounds of man is just going to drive someone back into the quarterback's lap. No matter how you spin it, I think this is interesting. It's just going to come down to the character stuff. This guy can stay on the field, keep his head on straight. This pick could totally be worth it. Cedric Gray was someone I always liked. He was my pretty much off-ball linebacker, 4 or 5 the whole cycle. He ended up being preseason ranked 5, final season ranked 5, but he kind of fluctuated in there. Love the coverage feel, and I think, especially at the Senior Bowl, you saw his ability to crash downhill, be a solid run defender. I also think he could be used as a blitzer because he is kind of straight line fast. Jarvis Brownlee Jr., Roger McCurry was a rock-solid nickel last year, so I don't know Brownlee Jr.'s path to the field. Really wish he ended up in Pittsburgh instead. Jaquan Jackson, big play, kind of a slot fade specialist. That's all I think about running. Like, if I draft Jaquan Jackson, I just want this man running slot fades. A little smaller, but super explosive, tons of long speed. Really popped for me at the Senior Bowl. Showcase, like, yeah, I'm a little small, but I could beat press coverage too, which makes him really interesting to see how he fits into this Tennessee offense. And then James Williams, this linebacker, safety hybrid, probably going to play linebacker, so I take a 7th round shot on him for sure. And then Jalen Harrell from Michigan, don't hate that swing of the bat as a team needs edge. I actually think that's not a bad pick whatsoever. I'm going to give the Titans a B. I think this is a rock solid class, man, and I think Latham, pretty solid starter. I think there's a lot of upside there with Sweat plus Simmons. Gray, I feel like you can count on as a starter pretty much right away. Brownlee, I'm scratching my head at, but he's a good football player. Jaquan Jackson, I think, brings a lot of interesting upside and big playability, yards after the catch stuff to the table. So, Tennessee, congratulations. You get a B. And then the last thing we got to talk about, the Washington Commanders. Jaden Daniels, my QB4, but, don't hate the idea that they went to, and I can see a lot of schematic similarities between what he did at LSU and Cliff Kingsbury. Jerzon Newton, I didn't think they should have paid Deron Payne. He was the guy that, hey, they're already paying the other 3 guys. I would just let Payne walk and end up paying him, having to trade those edge guys. If there's a market for Payne, I'd move on from him, to be honest with you, because I'd just rather see Johnny Newton, Jonathan Allen. But at the worst, this guy's your 3rd edge rusher is super fun to think about, and he probably is a long-term starter. It's just going to be Allen or Payne on the move eventually. Mike Samer still kind of a redundant guy to Quan Martin, but Quan Martin also could play maybe a little safety. So you lose Cam Curl, could Martin move to kind of play more safety, and Samer's still in the slot. He's just a good football player, and I was hoping the Steelers might take it with the next pick. So again, another guy that feels like he got sniped from Pittsburgh. So good football player, and I can't be mad at it. We'll figure out where he fits in the next. Ben Sinnott ends up being tight end too, learning from Zach Ertz. I love the 3-cone, the change of direction skills, so feels like a guy who could dominate the middle of the field, really make linebackers pay with some shiftiness and change direction skills. That's always a huge add for rookie quarterback. Brandon Coleman, whether it's tackle or guard, I think he fits in. He's either, I don't think he'll be a tackle, but I feel like this is an upgrade over Nick Algoretti. Luke McCaffrey, their biggest receiver, good blocker, former quarterback, feels like he knows how to find those soft spots in the zone, attacks the football too, kind of a quarterback's best friend of a trait to have there in a receiver. Don't wait for it to get to you and let someone jump that pass. Go attack it, right? Like, McCaffrey thinks about it like a quarterback. So, new to the position for sure, but, and maybe I didn't think he would go in the third round, but I'm honestly not mad about it. Last pick of the third round, I think it was a good shot in the dark there for Washington. And they're looking to add more size, and McCaffrey brings that to the table. Jordan Magee, too, like, solid. Not a very good linebacker class, but I think, or Magee? Maggie. I think it's Maggie. I think he's worth taking a shot in the dark on. I really do. And I think could be a solid football player for them sooner rather than later. Dominique Hampton from Washington, and then Javonte Jean-Baptiste. Never been super productive, but he is coming off his most productive season at Notre Dame, so I'm a Notre Dame fan. Had to talk about Jean-Baptiste. For a team that needs edge, like, Jean-Baptiste could just become, I keep saying this, like, end of his first year, he could become someone who's pretty heavily in the rotation, and maybe by year 2, it's just, like, a decent starter for them. Like, I don't think he's got, like, insane elite upside. He went in the 7th round after all, but I think he could become a pretty solid, dependable starter. And then we're looking at like him as the 7th rounder, and it's like, oh, dude, he plays almost every down. What? Or at least the early downs, So I like that value. I think they got a good football player there. I'm surprised to see who's available in the 7th round. But guys, that's going to do it for my NFL draft grades. Real quick, Washington, B+ to A-. I'll go A-, man. I think Adam Peters and company, they did a really nice job. I really think they focused on drafting good football players, especially past the first round, like Newton, Sanders-Still, Sanat, Coleman. We'll figure out where they fit in. Let's just get good football players. Jean-Baptiste, too, in the 7th round. We'll figure it out. So, guys, let me know what you would grade all 32 NFL teams and their NFL draft grade. And who's your favorite team? What did you think of the draft? Whether you liked it, loved it, hated it, whether it was similar to my mock drafts or not. Let me know what you're thinking about your team's your draft haul, and let me know how you're feeling about the team going into the season. Real quick before I let you go, just want to talk about the upcoming schedule for the channel. It's going to probably end up being 1 video a week, maybe 2, because I do want to put out a video for like favorite draft pick by all 32 teams, so I might do an AFC and NFC video for that. So it's kind of one long video, but just kind of broken up into parts. I am going to do a Wait Too Early 2025 mock draft next week, so let me know some prospects that you're looking to see me talk about in that video. I'll try to sneak them in if it feels like it makes sense. Really just trying to highlight the top 32 names I think you need to know before going into the 2025 draft cycle. And then we'll get into some summer scouting, but like I said, it's going to probably be 1 video a week. We'll do a handful of mocks to talk about some prospects too. I just do this on top of being a data collector for PFF, on top of being a play-by-play broadcaster for 3 different Division I schools, and a full-time job as a video editor. So like, I do a lot of different things, and I keep myself busy, no doubt about it. And I, girlfriend of 6 years, a dog to raise, all that sort of stuff. So it's probably just going to be 1 video a week. The off-season tends to be when my channel dips down anyways. So like, as much as I'd love to crank out a video a day, I don't have the time for it. And frankly, if I don't have mock draft in the title, it's not going to fetch a whole lot of views and stuff. So, hey, if you're a big fan of the channel, I really appreciate it. And if you're here just for the draft stuff, you know when to come back, and I'll be posting out mock drafts throughout the 2025 offseason anyways, or 2024 offseason, getting you set for the 2025 NFL draft. And I'll probably do some stock watches too, like once we get closer to college football season, specifically like targeting matchups like this tackle versus this edge, this corner versus this receiver, so that way we can kind of talk about that throughout the course of the season. If you guys have any other ideas for videos you want me to make, we got a whole lot of offseason ahead of us and a whole lot of dry time when it comes to NFL news. So let me know what you think those videos should be. And any ideas you have, there's no bad ones here. So let me hear what you want me to make throughout this off-season time. But guys, thank you so much for all the love during the draft season. Let me know what you think about the 2024 NFL draft grades that I handed out. And I hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. And until next time, my name is Tej, and I am signing off.